Mostly the lithographs are the large, colorful pieces. And then the smaller ones tend to be the etchings. There are a few little color etchings too. And just a little historical note, I taught at Indiana University in South Bend for almost 40 years. And when I first got there, I was hired as a printmaker, and I started to make these very large color lithographs. Well, they're large because they have to be printed off of stone blocks that were all about 3 inches deep, 3 inches thick, and they're as big as these prints right here. So those stone blocks, they weigh about 200, 250 pounds a piece. And that makes something large, because that's a 200-pound thing to move around. So in order to make a lithograph, what you do is you take these stone blocks, you resurface them by sanding or grinding them off, and then you make a drawing using a kind of thing which would be like a China marker on it. So I made a China marker drawing on the lithographic stone, and every time I wanted to, and then I would print that, and if I wanted it to be a color print, I would have to grind a new stone, make a new drawing, and print that on top of the previous print in color. So some of these lithographs that are here in the room are made up of 9 separate printings, each stone having its own color. This would be, I think, the most complicated one in the room, right there. And this one would be, oddly enough, one of the least complicated ones. There are 5 colors here, 9 colors there. And this is one of the first ones that I did. Now, etching is a process that involves small metal plates, or metal plates, I shouldn't say small, because you can make very large etchings too. And etching is a process that involves taking an acid-resistant ground, which is like a waxy, it's a waxy substance that can be rolled and heated onto a plate, which can then be scratched away with a needle. The plate is then submerged in acid, and the acid etches the areas where you have scratched through this ground, removing metal there. The plate's cleaned, and in order to print it, you would put ink on the surface and wipe the surface clean. Ink sticks only in the groove. The grooves hold the ink, paper is put on that, and the grooves transfer their ink onto the paper surface. So when you look at the etchings that I have done that are in this room, you'll see that they're all made up of tiny, tiny little lines, and those are the little lines that get scratched and then etched into the metal. And as technical aside here, with the lithographs, although the drawings are made of stone, there is no raised or lowered surface in a lithographic printing process. It's a process that works because of a chemical differentiation between the drawn area and the non-drawn area. The drawn area is a waxy, greasy area. The non-drawn area has been chemically treated to be waterlogged. So it's a process that works through making a drawing, treating it chemically so that the non-image area now loves water. And in order to print a lithograph, you sponge the stone with water and roll it with ink. The water sticks to the non-image area, and the ink sticks to the greasy drawing area. And then you can print multiple copies using that kind of process. It's pretty involved. So Melissa asked me, I think, to talk about a couple of pieces, and I'm just going to talk about these two because they're sort of at the beginning and the end of my teaching career. So this piece right here is a piece that I did in a series that I call Death Comes to South Bend. This is when I just arrived. And in it, this figure is coming down, so apparently it's from another world. It's because this is a figure that's flying really through space. And I wanted to show that by surrounding her with a lot of things that are kind of improbable, you know. Here are a bunch of flying fish. Here's a swirling drape. These are things that are not really of this world. They're emerging, coming into, impinging into our world. And our world is represented as a kind of table that's been set out. You know, this is the world that we live in, and these are the things that we have around us. So there's an intersection then between otherworldly things and the real plane, and yet it's all really kind of fantastic. Not something that could ever, in fact, actually happen. And in fact, I've stayed fairly true to this kind of imagery throughout my life. So I was very interested during my educational experience in pursuing things which were abstract. My father is an abstract artist, and my teachers were primarily abstract artists. But I was very interested in mythology and literature. I do a lot of reading. And so I wanted to deal with drawing things from life. And so these are the kinds of things that have really always been sort of provided a spiritual impetus for the things that I do. So here at the so this piece is from 1981. And this piece right here is from 2013, just a couple of years ago, or last year. And you're going to have to come up and see this. And in here, there's a similar kind of thing that's going on. There's a kind of otherworldly space. You know, there are these little things which are inexplicable. They're little flowers, perhaps. And I didn't want them to actually be flowers. I wanted them to be flower-like forms. So I'm a compulsive clipper outer of imagery. And I get magazines and newspapers, and I clip little things which kind of surprise me as I work through the paper. Oh my gosh, look at that. So I'll cut it out, and I'll put it in a file, and I'll save it, and I file them by subject, and I have a stack of these books that are filled with these little things. So I wanted flower-like forms, and I decided I didn't want to use actual flowers because, well, it's too overtly symbolic. Here are flower-like things which have the feeling of flowers, but what the heck are they anyway? Well, it's otherworldly. You know, give me a break. So I found a lot of dresses that I liked. You know, I like lilies, daylilies, and these are sort of daylily-like dress ones. So I cut a bunch of these things out. I made a series of drawings from those. I put together an initial drawing based on these things that I'd clipped out. And there was a face that I'd really liked from some model that I'd clipped out. She had great hair, and I invented the hands, and then I think I took some photographs of a friend's hands. I drew them in from my imagination, and I took photographs to help me with that. There was a little figure here stretching a bow who was a ballerina in a photograph from the New York Times. A cat that I think I invented, little mice that are on the table that I found somewhere and traced and put them in. And then I did a pencil drawing of this and worked it out, and the pencil shrunk it down to that size, traced it off, and transferred it. Like 10 of you are going to get to do tomorrow during the workshop. We're going to go through this whole process. You make a tracing of something. You transfer the tracing and graphite onto your plate, which has already been grounded, and then you scratch it in and you make your drawing. So she is symbolic of a certain kind of, well, I don't know, she feels like she's in charge, right? This is not a 50s woman. This is not Mad Men here. She's not Secretary of Mad Men. This is a woman who's clearly in charge. She has a sort of royal presence about her. Maybe we don't know what's going on in the background, but she apparently does because she's gesturing, and one of the balls has decided to almost settle on her hand like a little bird. And she is surrounded by her little minions here. Here's a little fairy. Here's this cat living in peace with the mice. How strange, how wonderful. So, and she is part of a larger series of prints that I'm working on, a series of It's a deck of cards, actually, and this is a suit that's dedicated to the cats. So we have this particular woman right here is the queen of the cats. I'm calling her Titania. Titania is the name of the fairy suit. Throughout the room, you'll find that there are a few other little pieces in here. I see one over here. There's a little jumping cat on the wall. That is my ace from this particular suit. And then if you move over too, you'll find another piece right here, which is called the Fall of Man. It has a group of little cats sitting in a window looking across perhaps a road or a canal into the palace across the way. And there's a painting of St. Michael driving the damned down into hell. And they're surrounded by all these cats, the Fall of Man. And I've just redrawn that so that there are 10 cats in it. That is the number 10 in the suit. And then there's one with 3 cats. And then there's one with the king. Right over there. He's Oberon. He's the king in this suit. Here's one with 6 cats. And all of them have some sort of, the cats represent a kind of otherworldly power. They are the thing which has a mythological base to it. That's the storytelling base, maybe the fairy tale base. And then there's something that represents the world, usually. So those are the things that I've been working on. We're going to get a chance tomorrow to go into the studio and actually do some of these things. And I know that there are 10 people who can actually do the prints, do the etching. And of course you can share a plate. You can share a plate, so if some of you want to go together and work on one plate together, that's perfectly okay too. And the rest of you, I think, we can let everybody in though, right?
Oh yeah.
Anybody who wants to visit, please feel free to do that. I brought an acid bath, so we're going to go ahead and do the whole thing. And I've got a lot of things laid out and prepared, so we're going to be into it right away. When you get there, I've got things for you to draw. You're going to do that drawing. We're going to get it in the acid bath. We're going to be printing that print. And by the end of 1 hour, maybe 1.5 hours, we're going to have a print to look at. And then if you want to add more onto it, then we can reground the plate, add more stuff on it, and put it back in and print it again. It's a flexible medium. People say, oh, that's delayed gratification. I don't want to do prints. I want to do drawings. I want to do paintings. Or in your case, you want to work on the computer. That's fine. I work on the computer too. So, but with prints, in fact, you can, oh, gee, you need to make that darker. Well, I'll go and put a new ground on it, scratch it in some more, throw it in the acid for 10 minutes, 3 minutes, darken it up a little bit, print it off. I'm doing that all the time, frequently, a couple times a day. I'll be adding stuff into the program. So it should be a lot of fun. You'll get a good sense about what etching is all about at the very least. Hope everybody at least can stop in for a little bit tomorrow. Even if you're just on campus, stroll on by. Ken, you're going to have a little liquor there, didn't you?
Oh yeah, definitely. We want them loose, right?
Everybody needs that, especially on Saturday morning. Those are my official remarks. Questions, comments, anybody?
Any questions about?
Okay, there's one right there.
Yeah, I want to know your idea behind some of your works. Like, I want to know what inspired this and what inspired the big one over there. Like, what's the concept?
Okay, let's talk about that one, actually. That's a great one, because when I was a child, the toys that my parents bought me they used to buy me Tinker Toy sets. I love Tinker Toys. These are Tinker Toys. Any of you recognize these things? And every Christmas and every birthday, I always get something called a Big Boy set. The Big Boy set came in a drum that was like this. You'd have all these purple, green, red, and blue and things, and you stick them together and build stuff. And I had a huge collection. A huge collection of Tinker Toys. And I would build crazy things. My dad was an art historian and an artist. And he showed me things in books. And one of the things that he showed me was how Gothic cathedrals are constructed. There was a nave, and the nave had, there's the main arcade, then there's the triforium gallery, and then there's the clear story on top. So I was fascinated by this idea, and I used to build churches out of these tinker toys. So when I got to my school, Indiana University, I broke out the tinker toys, and I built another cathedral for myself. And then I contrasted it with this figure behind it as a way of showing the tension between what we consider to be spiritual things and flesh or worldly things. That she is, in a sense, trapped within this kind of environment here. And at the same time, perhaps not so much trapped as it is, it's just an interplay between them. There's something also which is very playful to think about the idea of the toy. More questions, come on. It's hard to get me to stop talking once I start. I know you have a question.
I don't have a question.
You're afraid of me, aren't you? Anybody else? Yes, go ahead.
What do you do with the other prints? Because I see that most of these are a certain one out of, 20 or 40 or...
Well, of course, you are all artists, art students, okay? So the question is, what do we do with our art? Well, when you're a printmaker, you have multiple copies of everything that you've made. So the work itself can then become more affordable for people to collect. But like all artists, what I do is I make connections with galleries. One of my dealers is here tonight, Elisa Ellsworth, who runs a wonderful gallery up in Kendallville, Indiana, not too far. She's also, by the way, done a lot of the excellent framing that you see in all the rooms. So I'll make contacts with dealers, and then I'll ship my work out to their galleries. I'll compete in competitions. I entered about 30 or 40 competitions this year. Some people who are artists will sell their work at art fairs. In other words, we have a product. When you're a printmaker, you have a product, and you're going to be taking it to the marketplace. They're numbered because you tell people how many of them there are as part of a kind of sharing with the public. You're buying this thing, but it's not really unique. There are, in fact, other kinds of this thing. But then it just factors into the whole mechanics of the marketplace. Other questions? I know you've got a question.
Kind of, yes.
Okay, all right, let's hear it.
I was listening on a couple of, you had, was it etching and then it was aqua prints?
Aquatint.
Aqua tint.
Yes.
What was the aqua tint?
Oh, that's a great question, actually. Okay, so here's there's a piece over here which is a red background, and then there's a blue dress with striped stockings, okay? That is a plate that has what's called a key image plate. That would be like the kind of plate that I described to you, where you make a line, a scratch, a line drawing into a plate, and you etch that in. That is the black plate. Then there is a red plate, a blue plate, and a yellow plate that are done with this other process that this gentleman mentioned here called aquatint. Aquatint is a way of creating tones on an etching plate. And it's done by dropping dust onto a plate. So the dust will be distributed very evenly. The dust is made out of a rosin, which is like this rosin that you use when you, on bows and pitchers use to make your hands a little bit sticky. It's a sticky product. Excuse me, from the sap of trees. So this sticky dust drops down, and then you heat the plate, and the heat melts the rosin onto the plate, so now you have all kinds of tiny little dust particles on it. Well, if you wanted to make a triangular shape of value on a plate, what you could do would be to block out everything else but that triangle of fused dust. You submerge that in acid, and the acid bites down in between the dust particles to a certain depth. At about 16 minutes in a ferrochloride acid bath, the depth of the etch becomes deep enough that you get a very saturated color. If you stop it at 1 minute, you get a very light tint. So that's the aquatint process, and it's one of the ways that etchers have of adding color to back up a key plate. Other questions? I know you have them. One more person. I know you've got a question.
Me?
Yeah, I can tell.
Sure. Why different cards? I know you used to be cats and it came in the 80s. Why different cards? I mean, what was just because or just like?
Oh, I think everybody likes a good card, you know. I'm sort of, I drifted towards the cards because I've become very interested in the tarot cards,
Okay.
and the designs of the tarot cards. And I'm studying those cards and learning about the meaning, not because I believe any of this, but because I think that there's a history there of human metaphysical thinking that's very interesting. And the cards that I'm designing here are a way of playing also. You know, I get to play with my images. These are very small little pieces. They don't have to become large productions. This is me creating a very interesting little image that I can have some fun with in a relatively short period of time. You know. So there are a couple of reasons for it. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.